Reagan's bedroom was actually built twice. We actually built it so that it was where it was supposed to be, on the second floor of the house. We then made a duplicate bedroom, which was off to one side of the stage, which we refrigerated with 4 large air conditioning units over the top of the set, which, when we turned them on at night, by the time we came in the following morning to film, the temperature of the set would be down to approximately 30 degrees below zero. And then once the movie lights went on, the temperature would, of course, rise. We'd be able to film maybe for a couple of hours before the lights brought the temperature of the room back up, and we'd have to shut down, stop filming, and build up the cold again. Now there's a moment of reflection where Karras is really trying to put together, and I hope the audience at this point is trying to put together what all of this could mean.
Will you excuse me, Damien?
He's reflecting on the idea that if there is a force of evil in the world that he can see and that he's been dealing with, there must also be a force for good to combat it. Father Merrin goes into the bathroom having heart pains to take another of his nitroglycerin pills before he goes to do battle for the last time with the demon. Karras goes back into the room while Merrin is struggling to suppress his heart failure. And what Karras sees on the bed is an apparition of his dead mother. And so the games that the demon is playing with him have now been, the stakes have been raised. The demon is now trying to reach and destroy Karras through his guilt over his mother's death. And when Father Merrin observes that, when he observes that the demon is getting to Karras through his guilt, Merrin has to order Karras to leave the room. It's also at this point that Karras begins to see that little Reagan's heart is failing as well.
Please,
the demon is on the verge of killing Reagan. You have to bear in mind in this sequence that they are doing battle with a demon that has inhabited the body of a 12-year-old girl. And it's still the body of a 12-year-old girl, even though possessed by the demon.
What is it?
Her heart.
I know that Merrin and Karras come together because Merrin is a man of deep faith. His faith has been tested many times. Karras is a man whose faith has been found wanting. And so you have these two interesting and powerful personalities coming together from sort of opposite spectrums of religious belief. And it's the two of them that combine forces to do battle against the demon. And of course, the only thing that can defeat the demon is faith. This is a story about the mystery of faith. At this point, we're not looking at a horror film. You're not supposed to be conscious of these effects. At this point, it is the battle of good and evil in the bedroom of a 12-year-old girl. The entire movie is about premonition. It starts with the premonition of Merrin's that he will one day encounter this demon again. That's what the Iraqi sequence is about. But at this point in Merrin's life, of course, he knows that physically he doesn't have enough left. He may not have enough left to prevail. Merrin dies in the course of this exorcism, and it's Karras who has to carry it out in his absence, and Karras becomes the ultimate exorcist. I remember telling Max von Sydow that he should have a premonition that this will be the last act of his life. That in making this sign of the cross over the demon, He is, in effect, delivering the last rites for himself as well. That was the direction that I gave to Max. He's calm about it. He's living with heart failure. He's approaching a heart attack. And yet he calmly proceeds to die in a selfless action, prepared to meet his Maker for whatever lies ahead. Karis waits downstairs, having been excluded from this final moment, when Chris appears to him and asks him if her child is going to die.
Is it over?
Karis firmly and finally says no. And he goes back upstairs because he realizes that the most important thing he can now do with his life is make sure that that child does not die.
No.
And so he goes back upstairs expecting to assist Father Merrin, and instead he finds Merrin dead. The appearance of Kinderman at that moment is meant to bring the audience back out of the supernatural world into a certain world of reality where the little girl is the subject of a murder investigation. The appearance of the law here, of the police, of the voice of reason, is meant to suggest that there's a lot more at stake for this little girl and her mother than whatever the supernatural events that are occurring upstairs. But it's the death of Merrin and the demon's mocking of his death that causes Karis to attempt to physically drive the demon out of Regan. And this is perhaps the most controversial moment of the film, when Karis grabs the little girl off the bed and begins to literally pound the devil out of her. He pounds the devil out of her. He beckons the demon to come into him. And it's remarkable how audiences have been able to separate the idea that he's not choking a 12-year-old girl, that he's not become physical with a little child, but with what that child has become, a possession of the devil. And Karis manages to exhort the demon to leave Regan and enter him. Regan tears off his St. Christopher medal, the talisman that predicted all of this, and Karis, now possessed himself, realizing that he is now with the demon and could kill Regan at this moment, instead decides to, in a momentary act of self-sacrifice, to take the demon with him out the window and to his death. The demon has left Karis, and Karis is now without sin. So the story again reaches a kind of circle. It's being observed by the symbol of rationalism, the detective. There's another death at the bottom of the stairs. It's a supernatural death in a way, but the body lying at the base of those steps is real. The action that drove Karis there is one of self-sacrifice. Faith has triumphed over evil. And in these final moments, Father Dyer appears and issues the last rites. If you watch Father Karis's hand, his bloody hand, he still has enough consciousness remaining to make his confession by indicating his willingness to do so only with the movement of his fingers. And to a priest, that constitutes enough will to confess and receive absolution. Karis's nobility lies in the ultimate act of self-sacrifice that he commits to save the child. All of the shock effects, all of the horror, all of the torture and punishment of the little girl are all there to test the faith of this one priest, who ultimately makes a sacrifice, the sacrifice of his own life to save the child. And there can be no more religious act or an act of faith than this act of personal sacrifice that Karras ultimately commits. It's similar to the conclusion of A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, where Sidney Carton gives his life for someone else who's being led off to the guillotine. That's why the film is completely and utterly about good triumphing over evil. But in this one instance, what I try to do at the end of the film is to suggest that it is a continuous and ongoing struggle, that evil has not yet been ridden from the earth.
She doesn't remember any of it.
That's good.
All done.